Good morning, Dr. Lopez and other viewers. My name is Sean Presley, and I'm here to talk today about Grace Cho's memoir, Tastes Like War. But before we begin, I must give the obligatory coffee mug shot. My autumn coffee mug here as we celebrate this Thanksgiving season, and I'd like to extend my warmest Thanksgivings for you and everyone who's viewing this video. Now back to the book. So, Tastes Like War reads like someone who has gently opened a window that had been stuck closed for decades. Cho's story is tender, it's painful, it's filled with quiet humor, and it is deeply human. It follows a daughter trying to understand her mother across countries, across trauma, and across the complicated terrain of mental illness. It also explores how food becomes memory, conversation, comfort, and connection when spoken languages fail. It feels like someone sitting across from you at a kitchen table and telling you the truth. As I read it, I kept thinking about my own family, especially my son who battles severe depression and the long shadows that it casts across everyday life. But like in Cho's story, I will also share with you how food has played a huge role in our journey. So Cho opens the book by walking into her mom's tiny Princeton apartment in 2008. The room's quiet. The air feels suspended. There's a plant in the window that's slowly dying. Her mother, she barely speaks, sitting in her own inner world. Cho loves her. You can even feel that love. But Cho also feels a distance that aches. She's honest about the confusion, the fear and the emotional stretch of being the daughter of someone whose mind is no longer moves in predictable ways. There's a sadness, but there's also loyalty. Cho keeps showing up even when she doesn't know how to help, even when her mother continues to withdraw. Now this part right here really brought a wave of my own emotions when I read it the first time. I know what it feels like to feel love for someone who battles a mind that turns inward. I know the frustration, I know the sadness, the flashes of anger and the unfairness of all of it, and the guilt that follows that anger. I know the helpless feeling of watching your child suffer and wanting to tear the roof off the world to fix it. Yet having to accept that sometimes you can only sit by and wait. It is the world's worst roller coaster because you never fully understand what they feel. And all you want to do is help them carry the weight. And that's what Cho does. She puts these conflicting emotions into words in a way that you feel painfully familiar. So, part one takes us back to Korea during the years that shaped Cho's mother. The chapter American Dreams tells the story of a childhood marked by war, loss, hunger, and a world where survival became second nature. These pages lay out the roots of trauma that a mother carried into adulthood. Trauma, this never travels alone. It hides in memory, in instincts, and even in silence. Now, when I read this section, I was pulled back to my own personal experiences when I was stationed in South Korea from 1993 to 1994. The country had changed a lot since the war. It became very modern and vibrant, but you could still see the ghosts of the history of the older Koreans, the ones that I met during my time there. Many of them had lived through the war and its aftermath, and even though decades had passed, you could still sense the weight of what they survived. I will always have a deep place in my heart when it comes to the Korean people. Their resilience carved an experience and became a part of my spirit and my heart. But part one also gives us moments of warmth. In Madame Mushroom, Cho's mother becomes kind of a forest wizard, which made me think of Radagast the Brown from the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit stories. How she strides confidently through the woods of Washington searching for mushrooms and wild greens. There's humor in this image, but also beauty in the way she recreates pieces of Korea when whatever she finds. If you've ever been to Korea, you understand that it's a very mountainous and forested nation. Extremely beautiful, and it does have a lot of similarities to Washington and the Pacific Northwest. In blackberry season, mother and daughter pick berries, their hands are stained with juice, and these right here, these are golden memories that are shared. But then we have the shift and schizophrenogenesis. This is where Cho's mother's mind begins to fray. Fear grows, suspicion creeps in, hallucinations begin to appear. Cho writes about this with tenderness, but also with a lot of honesty from the heart. It is heartbreaking to see the mother from the earliest scenes begin to disappear. And this hit me hard because not only do I live as a caregiver to someone I love, but my wife and I, we also lead a support group for caregivers. The motto we use for this is simple. We call it expect the unexpected. Cho's story is a vivid reminder how this motto is true and how it lives with us. We next go to part 2, following Cho into adolescence and young adulthood. And she writes about wanting to cook and create while her mother pushes her towards academic success. I found this touching and a little funny because you can see the tug of war that's playing out between the two. Cho, she finds joy in food. Her mother finds safety in her daughter's achievements. Reading this also reminded me of someone from my own past. You know, ironically, when I was in the Air Force, I had dated this girl who was half Japanese, half American, and she was from Oregon. This is when I was stationed in Idaho. She used to say, when we would talk about family, she would refer to her mom as a little kooky. At the time, I had no context to understand what she meant, but reading this book, it was like an epiphany. It made me wish that I knew how I could contact her so I could tell her, I get it now. I understand what you meant. Part 2 also talks about the silence around mental illness. Families do not openly talk about it. Cho's family carried a lot of this alone. This is where I'm going to get on my soapbox for just a second here. I know we all have different ideas of how we want to help people, particularly those that struggle with mental health and mental illness. But one thing that we need to do is come together and we need to stop treating this as some sort of taboo topic that we only whisper about or we keep to ourselves. We owe people, particularly the people that suffer through it, honesty and compassion, not secrecy. Next, we get into part 3 of the book, where Cho is in college at Brown University. She shares some funny stories about arriving on campus and realizing how unfamiliar everything felt, including the food. But she also carries guilt and anxiety about her mother back home. And I have to say, amen, I feel that. I feel that whenever I am on campus myself, when I'm attending classes, even recording this video. There is always a little bit of carrier guilt that comes with me, wishing that my son could go through his college experience and enjoy it in the way that I do. She goes deeper into this emotional tension of being far from someone who's struggling. It makes you want to grow, learn, and build your life, but you feel this backward pull that comes from fear and love. In One Time, No Love, her mother uses the phrase when cooking meals with no emotion behind them. Cho uses it to reflect on the exhaustion of caregiver and the way love can become a strain under pressure. This is a very tender and honest chapter. This reminds me of something I believe deeply. The kitchen is so much more than a place where food is prepared. It is the heartbeat of the home. The kitchen, they serve many purposes. They are often even our own counselors, our confession booths, our safe spaces, and they are in many ways the best place for therapy sessions. Some of the real healing in life happens while standing over a stove or sitting over a warm plate of comfort food. Part 4 of the book focuses on healing, not the kind that fixes everything, but the kind that softens what is hardened. Cho begins to study mental illness, history, and trauma with fresh eyes. She starts connecting the dots between her mother's suffering and the systems that shaped her life. Doesn't excuse anything, but it gives an understanding that allows it room to bloom and begin to blossom. This is where food becomes a bridge again. Cho cooks for her mother cooks for her. These meals are moments where the two of them are together and they're taking steps towards one another. They don't pretend that the past is simple. They don't ignore the pain either. But they find small moments of closeness in the scent, in the taste, in the texture of these old recipes. that they would cook. Part 4 is where the memoir becomes an act of reclaiming. Cho writes her mother back into complexity, refusing to let the world remember only the illness. She honors the mother who forged mushrooms, the mother who raised her, and the mother who lost herself to silence. It's a gentle, soft landing of life filled with many sharp edges and pain. A couple weeks ago, my son himself had a very bad moment. It was one of the lowest points he had reached in a very long time, to the point where he even had suicidal thoughts creep in. We talked to him briefly, and then we gave him his space so that he could work through his fog of depression. Took about a day, but when he was ready, we sat down to a meal of workwoman's roast. With workwoman's roast, we had mashed potatoes, corn, green beans, peas, and all those comfort food fixings that you put on the plate that is intended to warm your soul. As he ate, he began to lift his head. As he began to lift his head, he began to talk. As he talked, we all experienced healing. This is the story of Taste Like War. It's not a story with easy answers, but it's a story about how love survives and how healing begins in these tiny little places. And underneath it all, food is the lifeline that keeps us when the world is falling apart around us. Now, there's a couple of final special sections about the book that I want to talk about. The chapter titles, I think they're little works of art. They all have flavor, tone, and symbolism, particularly the ones that have food titles. Kimchi Blues, that's one that really stuck with me because I understand kimchi and I understand its deep meaning in the Korean people. We in America, because we're this melting pot of so many cultures, we don't have one single food that has the same cultural impact as kimchi does with identity of the Korean people. Kimchi, it's tradition, it's memory, it's history, it's survival, it's that powerful, and I understand that. There's also titles like Madam Mushroom, Crust Girl, and Cheeseburger Season. There's playfulness in these titles. They give a balance of seriousness to the book. They give you a smile when you read them, but then they also realize something real underneath. They're fun and lighthearted and meaningful, and they remind you that food carries humor just as much as it carries history. The other part of the book that I want to finish with, and I want to close this session with today, is that how the book touches on Audre Lorde's A Litany for Survival. And this is a bold choice. It sets an emotional stage for naming fear, struggle, silence, and the courage it takes to simply exist. As someone who got their first bachelor's degrees in English creative writing, I understand how powerful poetry has a way of delivering truth straight into the bloodstream, straight into the heart. Poetry is emotion cut into shape. So to close, I created an original poem here that I want to share with you. And this is a hope for caregivers everywhere. It's called The Kitchen is a Place of Healing. Here's where the light stays on, even when the rest of the house feels dim. Here's where the Here's where the light stays on, even when the rest of the house feels dim. Here's where someone stirs a pot, not because they have the answers, but because they have love. Caring is a long road. Some days it feels like cracks in the earth. Some days it feels like rain after drought. And still we show up, we keep watch, we hold space. You are not alone in this work. Your strength does not have to be silent. Let the warmth of the kitchen steady you. Let the scent of a meal remind you that healing can happen in small bites. Sit, breathe, taste something comforting. Offer a plate to someone who struggles to speak. This is how hope survives. When the world feels heavy, return to the place where steam rises and hearts begin to thaw. The kitchen can carry you both. Thank you, Dr. Lopez.